Alright, y'all, good morning. What we're going to be talking about today is writing in our journals. So I hope you're already working on your 5-a-day on the board. Today is Monday, so make sure you're already working on that. Numbers 1 through 5 for Monday. You have your copy on your desk. So let's start talking about writing really quick while you're still working. We've really just started introducing narrative writing and creative writing. So what we're going to be working on this week is writing in our journal. So whenever you finish up that 5-a-day, I want you to go ahead and get out your journal like you already have. And you remember when you open your journal up, you've got your little heart map on the inside that tells you what to do, what you've been wanting to write about. You remember when we did our heart maps at the beginning of the year, those heart maps, we put in the little places things that we were wanting to write about before we actually started the school year. This was something we did on the first day of school. And then you're going to flip to your table of contents, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and get our 5-a-day off the board. Let's see if I can get this. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, so what I've done is I've given you a writing process handout. I've given you a creative narrative writing elements handout. I've given you a writing checklist, and I've given you a creative writing elements guide. So every day this week, I'm going to give you a writing topic. And with that writing topic, you're going to take it and you are going to write it and respond to the prompt that I give you in your journal. So today, the writing prompt that we're going to do is going to come from your actual packet. So I want you to go ahead and go to your Creative Writing Elements teacher model that I handed you out. It looks like this. And it's got all of the elements on the front, and then we're just going to go through it together as a class. So go ahead and get that out for me. And we'll give you just a couple of seconds to do that. All right, so with our creative writing, the reason we have to do, or we need to implement creative writing in the classroom is because we want you guys to be able to use your thoughts and your interest in your writing and do so in a creative way. When we write creatively, it makes things so much more interesting. So that's what our goal is for this. So when you look on the very front of your packet, it says when your narrative creative writing elements, we have a clear plot, we have character development, we have point of view, we have descriptive language. You remember we've talked about some of those things before. So those are the elements of creative narrative writing. Those are the elements of creative narrative writing. So that is what we're going to focus on today, are these elements. So we have to make sure, do we have, number one, do we have a clear plot? Okay. Number two, did we develop our characters? Okay. All right, number three, what is our point of view? And y'all, what point of views do we have? Remember, we have first person, second person, we have third person, and we've talked about those third person point of views. We've talked about third person limited, third person omniscient, and then we've got to make sure that we've got that descriptive language. Remember, descriptive language is always very important when we're writing. We want those words to really jump off the page. We want to be able to have so much imagery when we're reading. We want it to really give us some good descriptions. Alright, so that's for our elements of creative narrative writing. So that's what we're going to do in the journal today. So go ahead and flip with me And this is our writing topic. So we're talking about the setting is going to be the food room and the ISS, which the ISS stands for International Space Station. You remember we watched a video on the International Space Station on yesterday. All right, when you look, you've got character development, and there's your character, okay? And then you've got setting development, and there's your setting. So they go ahead and they give you that. They're telling you where it's taking place, and they're telling you about the character. The character is a hard worker. They're patient. They have a good sense of humor. They're a computer science background. Their interests are reading, computers, and photography. Their external traits are they have brown hair, brown eyes, they're medium in height, thin, and a big smile, and they're proud members of the American International Space Station. Our setting is the food room where the astronauts eat their food. So remember, the setting is when and where the story takes place. Don't forget, remember, we talk about that all the time. All right, so it is telling you there's a small table with condiments strapped down. The straps are on the chairs, and they allow the astronauts to strap in so they won't float around while they're eating their food. So they've already given you the setting, and they've given you the main character. So you already have those two things. So you can go ahead and look on the board and say, okay, I have a good character development, and I already have a clear plot. So now you've just got to come up with your own point of view. So do you want to tell it from your point of view, like maybe you were the one who actually is on the ISS and the International Space Station, and that's you, the character? Or do you want to tell about somebody else, and it be you telling the story through another character and not through your actual self? So I gave you a plot development chart. And you remember when we talk about the plot, it contains different elements. We've got the exposition, which is the start, rising action, climax, falling action, and then the resolution, or, yes, the conclusion. So what you're going to do is, I've given you all of this as an outline for you to go by. Your teacher model gives you a sample story, okay? And this sample story is about two characters on the ISS. One of the characters' names is David, and the other one is named Amber. So you're not going to use these characters. This is just going to give you a clue as to what to do. So Amber and David are on the ISS, and Amber stops, and she wants to enjoy lunch. Well, she realizes that her macaroni and cheese is missing, and that was the only thing that she wanted to eat that day, and every Tuesday she eats macaroni and cheese. So she finally notices that David is in the lunchroom where she is also waiting, and he's over there laughing. So what can y'all think if he's looking over there at her laughing and she doesn't have her lunch that she was supposed to have? Good, maybe he did it. Maybe he's the one who took it. Did he steal it? Did he eat it? Good. So that's what we're going to infer. Now, when we talk about inferencing, you remember we talked about inferencing skills. What do we do when we infer? Yes, good. Okay. We are making an educated guess as to what's going to happen. We are making an educated guess. We have got to use those inferencing skills. So, this is what I want you to do. That story that I've given you, I want you to read through it. Okay? The only thing that you are allowed to use in this journal writing is the setting that was provided to you and the main character. Okay? Now, the main character I gave you was not Amber and David. I'm talking about the character development. The character development, it went ahead and described the character to you. So all you really have to do is come up with a name for your character. And if you want to add a couple of other little things about them, that's perfect. Maybe you could describe their personality more. Maybe you want them to have this kind of clothes, or maybe they look like you want to add a little something else. And what I provided you with, that is totally okay. Okay? So go ahead and look at that for me. Get your journal out on your desk. Make sure you have it. Now, this is what we've got to talk about as we're talking about inferencing. when you complete this activity, I also want you to incorporate your prior knowledge. Okay? And what is prior knowledge, y'all? Good. It's what we already know. What do we already know about the International Space Station? Okay? All right, it's big. All right, what else? All right, astronauts. It's where they live. Good. Okay. Gravity. Why don't we put gravity and then put none in parentheses? Okay? All right, so that's what we already know. Those are some of the things that we know. That is our prior knowledge. So, when you're writing this story, I want you to use that prior knowledge to come up with a really good climax, rising action, and resolution. You've already got the setting, so now you just have to use your prior knowledge, which you already know about the International Space Station, and go ahead and use your setting that you were provided with and your characters to come up with a good, creative, narrative writing. Okay? All right, when we do this, I've also given you some transition words, and I've given you some writing dialogue examples. So if you want to use dialogue, remember dialogue is what? When we use what in the story? Quotes, okay? When you use quotes. Okay, you're quoting what someone is telling you. So I want you to use that dialogue. I've given you the examples for that. And then I've also given you some examples for some good transition words. Remember, when we use transition words, we want to use things like initially, pretty soon as, moments later, later on, meanwhile, things like that so our story really flows. Now that is our assignment for today. Okay? You're going to go in your second page, and you remember this is our table of contents. And you should have it labeled at the top. We've already done that together. All right, in that table of contents, that's page 2. You're going to have your lines here, okay? All right, I want you to draw number 3 over here to the side. Do you a line all the way down. And then I want you to put ISS, International Space Station, narrative, okay? All right, and with this narrative, I need it to at least be 2 pages. And don't forget to indent. Now, one other thing. This is just what we're doing for today. Our narrative tomorrow is going to be completely different because we're trying to practice these narrative skills and this creativity. So tomorrow, you're going to get out your journal again, but tomorrow you'll write a different page number in the journal. You'll have it on a different part of your table of contents. And I'm going to give you a prompt out of this. I'm going to come by to each one of your desks and I'm going to give you a prompt. And what's so cool about it is I'm going to let you do it. So you're going to look at the actual prompt, okay? And you're going to flip to whatever, just randomly. Flip each flap, just completely random, okay? Like this one says, write a catalog description about a crashed spaceship that is very worried, okay? Or if I say, write a radio spot about an exercise machine that likes to gossip. All right, can exercise machines really gossip? No, exactly, they can't. But that is how we can also incorporate creative writing. All right, I want you to look at the writing process really quickly that I gave you right here with the big circles on the front, and when you open it up, it's got the pencils. All right, when you look at this, I want you to think when we're writing, okay? We've got to have pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit. But before you start this ISS assignment in your journal, I want you to get out a piece of paper and I want you to go ahead and start brainstorming. And remember, when you brainstorm, that's when you're just coming up with ideas off the top of your head, just trying to figure out what you want to do. So go ahead and do that for me, and then we're going to talk more about the drafting and revising. For right now, we are just trying to see what all you know. Okay? And then we're going to implement our checklist later on in the week. After we've practiced this journal writing, we're going to do it with our checklist, and we're going to say, okay, have I done this? Do I have an introduction? Do I have organization? Is it elaborate? Do I have my transitions? Do I have a conclusion? Okay? We're going to do all those things. So every day this week, we are going to be writing in our journals so that we can implement creative writing and narrative writing and all types of writing in the classroom. Now, does anybody have any questions? Okay? Remember, it's got to be 2 pages. I want you to go ahead and get that journal out, and I want you to start. Raise your hand if you need me.